this afternoon, a man that I am proud to say I have known so long, I can almost understand him. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Sid Calderbank.
Thank you very much. I'll try to live up to the introduction. I've only lived in 3 houses during my entire 66 years of life, and none of them have been more than 5 miles from where we are now. So if you don't understand any of this, it's you that's in the wrong place. Welcome to Lancashire, and welcome to my talk on the history and the development of Lancashire and its dialect over the last 500 years or so. A lot of people think that Lancashire dialect is all about cowls and clogs and cotton and coal. Well, that it is. But I'm here to tell you it's first of all a lot older than that. And at one time, it was a lot more important to a lot more people. If I start at the very beginning, 1,000 years ago, before there was a county of Lancashire, the ancient kingdom of Northumbria, as its name suggests, covered everywhere north of the Humber, both sides of the Pennines, all the way up to and including the Scottish lowlands. And many scholars believe that all the people who lived in that vast ancient kingdom spoke more or less the same language. And what we hear today as the Northern English dialects in that area are actually distant echoes, the fading memories of this ancient tongue. At the time, it was the dominant language of all England. But over the centuries, the language of our neighbouring kingdom to the south, the kingdom of Mercia, which went more or less from the Humber to the Thames and bounded by the Welsh borders, their language got a lift from the establishment of 2 great universities and from the exploits of a fellow you'll heard of called William Shakespeare. And that lifted their language, and eventually it was the language of Mercia, which was readily understood by the Northerners and by people south of the Thames, that rose to become the language of the empire and left us behind as quaint, out-fashioned Northerners. I may well have been out-fashioned for 700 years. Over the centuries, as populations increased, these local dialects began to emerge, and as there's more people living in one area, they begin to develop their own ways of talking and their own words for different things that they meet in their daily lives, until the oldest song that I can find that is in an identifiable Lancashire dialect turns out to be a 16th century comic song from Warrington. It tells the tale of a fellow called Gilbert Scott and his wife, Grace, and their horse, a mare called Parry, and an unknown man in a pub. Now, I'm going to have to tell you what this is all about before I sing it. Otherwise, I'll be talking to myself for the next 2.5 minutes. One day, Grace sends Gilbert off to the fair in Warrington to sell this horse. And on his way into town, he meets a bloke in a pub. And this fella says, "Are you selling that horse?" And Gilbert says, "Aye." And this man says, "Well, I'll save you trouble, I'll have it. Come and have a pint." So he buys him his dinner, he gets him an eel pie, he buys him a couple of drinks, and they have a thoroughly enjoyable afternoon of it together until it comes time for Gilbert to go. And this man says, "Well, I have no brass with me at present, but I'll be here next week and I'll see you right then." So Gormless Gilbert goes home, bought horse and bought brass. His wife, Grace, from whom all Lancashire women are directly descended, reacts very badly. And she picks up various kitchen implements and she beats him about the head and shoulders with him. And she leaves him bleeding in the fireplace. And she puts on her best hat and coat and she goes to Warrington and she waits. And she waits. And it says in the song she waits for 5 market days, which means she is either very patient or more likely still very angry, until one day out at window she sees this bloke riding down the street on Parry, her horse. She dashes out into the road with her hat flying off and her coat flapping behind her, and she drags this fella off Parry's back and she sets about him in the middle of the road. A crowd, as you would expect, gathers, even in Warrington. That's a rugby league joke. And Grace by this time has got her fingers in this fella's throat and she's just about to stop off his chimney when out of this crowd steps a fella called Randall Shea, and he knows Grace and he's able to calm her down. But what makes this song so special to people like me and students of Old Lancashire is that cleverer men than me have discovered that Randall Shea was real. And he was Sir Thomas Butler's bailiff in Warrington between 1548 and 1550, which gives us a very accurate date on the song. It puts Shea in a position to resolve this argument on the streets of Warrington, and it gives me a good tale to tell you before I sing this completely incomprehensible song. I shall have a sup of water.
How big would Warrington have been then?
Oh, I have no idea. Not so big. Big enough to fit Grace in. Come, all ye good Gressel folks, and ye must tarry. Ostellana Gilbert Scott, Souden Smur Parry. Souden Smur Parry, that's what he can infer. But whence to be paid, he knows not, I'm sure. And so off he goeth one, and he Towden's wife, Grace, who looked me her kipper, who sweaty mored face, who picked him up thillock, he found me a whack, he found us in well, he broken his back. Hey, thou, who were for thee? If that levy but rise, ask in the note leap wench in me that lies. Thou udget, quoth who, but where doth he dwell? Well bid lucky, quoth he, that I cannot tell. I took him to be a good grisselman's son. He'd spent twopence on me, and whence he'd been done. He gave me a luncheon, a dentist snig pie, and it taunted it shark me mother's loving lie. And so Grace, who prompted and neatest and near to Warrington went to Wednesday but tea, and dear well who stayed. Full 5 market days till one of her come to Randall Shea's. I and Grace, who were resting one day in her room, and spied them on riding the mare into town and ban scuzzer out. And who was a gloppant as out of the Windward Lake for to loppant. Her stompert who steered, and dad steers who run with that under time, and her wit well he gone. Her headgear flew off, and so did her snoot. Her stompert who steered as if he'd been wooed. Up at Randall's abide, and above up to Fletch, and a food him on tea, mer greatly to cratch. Hey, me good man, quoth who, you'll but greets the reap, Murray, and beggars I'll send him most money for Parry. I eat money, quoth he, that I can spur. Well, be lucky, quoth he, and then I'll have the mare. Oh, proud and oh, thrumpet him, sham to be seen. Thou hangman, quoth who, as poo out the een, as make thee a something, as how they've growt, as either that money or as poo out the throat. And between them, they made such a wearisome dinner to keep them to peace. Randall Shea to come in, come fine, Auntie Grace. Come fire that down, what they let a monkey around in a wound, bit like it was I. But I ain't so hard on, I think as this woman is quite spoiled, mon. Come fine on to grace, come fire that down, the set merit money, you're with you one, so grace get her money. And woman's who's gone, but there's kept it herself, as Gilbert Scott none. Thank you very much. I only sing that because I can.
Does anybody else sing Sid?
Not at the moment, no. There's only 2 men ever recorded that. The other one's dead, and I've sold out. There are people around who could sing it, but they don't sing it because we've reached that situation where, oh, that's Sid's song, so I won't do it. But it's there, and I'm on the internet singing it, and we hope it lasts. But it's written down, and that little story I told you about it, and it was first written down in about 1850 by John Orchard Halliwell in his splendidly titled Dictionary of Archaic and Provincial Words, which is a 2-volume national thing about ancient songs and ballads and so on. And he gives that as an example of old Lancashire dialect. That song survives on its own. There's nothing anywhere near it for about 250 years. Why should one song survive that long on its own? I think it may be because it's a common comical tale where the fellow, you can try it yourself if you want, go and sell the car next weekend and say, well, I've left him with the keys and the logbook, and he said he'll be in the pub next week, and we'll see him then. I think, you know, it could be that tale and that scenario has just lasted that long, that it's always been available. Anyway, there was no way at the time to write standard English, never mind make an attempt at writing local dialects, any local dialects, and nothing really changed in Lancashire until up pops this man. John Collier, known as the father of the dialect, better known under his pen name of Tim Bobbin. He was born in Urmston, which is now part of Manchester, in 1708, the son of a curate, and educated by his father for a life in the church, which sadly wasn't to be. When he was about 14 years of age, his father was taken seriously ill with something that left him incapacitated and blind, and young John was sent out to help to support the family and was apprenticed to a fellow called Johnson in Mottram to work on a Dutch loom. And all I can find out about a Dutch loom is that it's a small hand-operated loom that they use for weaving tapes and frills and fancies and so on. And he hated every minute of it, because he was an intelligent young man. He could read, he could write, he was musical, he played in the church orchestras, and he's artistic. And that is a self-portrait. He didn't like and he didn't appreciate at all being stuck behind this little loom, but he did his duty to his family, to his father and to his employer, until at the age of 20 he shook off his indentures and he set out to become a travelling schoolmaster, teaching reading, writing, arithmetic and music, and travelling all around the villages around the Rochdale, Oldham, Middleton area. And as he travelled from one place to another, he often stayed at wayside inns, and he found that he could supplement his teacher's salary by painting new pub signs for the landlords. And all this activity introduced the young Mr. Collier to drink. And his lifelong association with Bacchus is legendary. So why have I brought him here to the English Country Music Weekend? It's because we really do owe him everything in terms of dialect writing. Because here we have an intelligent man travelling the south and east of Lancashire in the middle part of the 18th century. Educated, witty, musical, a fearless satirist, a lightning wit. He was a bon vivant of the very highest order, an enthusiastic drinker. He was often to be found in the homes of the rich and the landed gentry. But as he moved from one place to another, and as he moved out of one valley into the next, he realised that the people spoke in a slightly different way. And he felt that as more people like him were beginning to travel in the middle of the 18th century for reasons of business and commerce, that these localised accents and dialects had to change, they had to merge. There has to be some commonality emerges from that. I can't sell you a sack of corn if we don't call it the same thing. There has to be a common language that comes out of this. And so with his usual flair for things like this, he acted to prevent the loss of the dialect of the old folk of Milnrow. And in 1746, he published a little comic dialogue between Thomas of Williams and Margaret's of Roths, to give him his full name, between Thomas and Mary. Mary his girlfriend, Mary a Dick's, a Tommy's a Peggy's. They used to do that. They used to queue up their ancestors' names after their own. It's a bit clumsy, but you don't need programs like Who Do You Think You Are? Because you're carrying them all around with you all the time. Thomas is trying to explain to Mary just how he's got into so much trouble that he don't go home to face his master. And he published this just over 250 years ago now, in 1746, and I'm going to recite for you the opening few paragraphs of how he gets into this trouble. And I'm not going to tell you what it's about, because it's only 250 years old. And anybody from north of Humber will understand bits of this. Cheers. What? There'd be more down there a gone out of muck, I'll about thee. Because what does think but tell the neighbours yesterday, us lads must have had a bit of a holiday. And still, we must do so odds and ends, and I must take the bray of mouldy wire piles, else go to Rochester with a car and a white calf. Nah, Lucy Mary, I were lither and take mind of a George, so I'm for Rochester. So I get up it's crack a day, I done to me Sunday jump to the top of my singlet, and I seat out. All went all greyeth, until I come within well a mile at time, and there, as Jewel would eat, a tit were standing at tailhouse door. And me calf, well, Jewel had borne out it seemed for me, me calf takes tit for its mother, and it needs soccer. I'm full of a turd of a tit while I takes me calf for a couch. Well, I went so when I say it, but as soon as I felt it sock, I up the roof and I killed me calf, as dear as a nit. What could anyone do? I couldn't have left it alone. Flesh into been killed gradely, 'twere as good a veil as her did on a twittle. Me master must take 17 shillings and suspence for it yonder the figure. But, as luck would have it, a butcher at tailhouse, and he come out when he heard me calf bawl. But instead of feeling sorry, that flowering currency took such a go at a loafing, and come for shame tell me he buried to me for a pint of ale. Now that were pretty chap. Because I know, as Dickie or Jones or Wills or Sams, he buried a child at Rochdale to the week, and he paid Joe Green a groat for a grave no bigger nor a fippenny trunk. But I'd negate him. And so I borrowed a shoe and I buried my son. And I'm trunk shoving it in. Well, when I found come in me noddle, a thide could be no war, so I'd flee it. Hey, but Jew lot whittle were to be late on, but butcher. And spite for tight wouldn't have laid it me. What could any man do? Me? I bargained with Rasket as he took 5 grub into carcass. I only gave me 13 pence. So I get brass and went his ways with care. But what's thinking you if I tell you as he never got it? He showed it. That owed him. That owned us. Twopence halfpenny a pound. Did that make sense to anybody? Did bits of it make sense to some of you? Yeah? Anybody want to have a go at telling me what it were all about? Spawned at least 15 derivatives and developments over the whole of the 19th century. And for its bicentenary, it was originally written in 1805, for its bicentenary in 2005, I gathered together all these 15 different versions of this song. They've all got the same characters in. They all sing to the same tune. They could not possibly have been written by the same people, because I've traced them from 1805 to 1895. And all I can think of is because this little character, this Jonah Grimfield character, became every man. He became the man of the people, and everything that went wrong and everything that needed deal with, Jonah Grimfield was sent out to sort it out. And I'm now going to sing the song, and the part of the French will be taken by Irene Shettle, who made the part her very own some years ago in the Conservative Club in Whitby, as I recall. There may be some Dutch and Spanish involved, but the French are the problem. Says John to his wife on hot summer's day, I'm resolved in Grimfield no longer to stay. And so ask you to round them as fast as I can, so it's fairly well Grimfield, it's fairly well done. For a sojourn asked me, and brave out them I see, and I'll step me a battle with French. Aye, John, says our none, and who bitterly cried, will to me one at foot, or else thou means to ride on Zens, when should ride either ass or a mule, her ass covering Grimfield as black as the old jewel, both climbing and starving, with never a farther little well it'll have any man mad. Aye, John, sin we come into Grimfield for dwell, we thought money a bare meal, I can spirit will tell bare meal, because I that ever will know there's been 2 days this week as we've had nought at all, and I'm very near-sighted, of who I'll survive it, I'll fight either Spanish or French. Hey, then says me none to Margaret, hey, John, that's so hot. I'd ne'er go to Oudham, but in England I'd stop. Hey, matters now mad, cause to Oudham I go, I ne'er clem to death, but somebody else know him, cause Frenchman I find. I'm about telling me mind, I ain't a known fight, him and run. And so I seat off down Brew, cause we're living up top. And I thought I'd reach Oudham, wherever I stopped, if you come. And he stirred when I got into mumps, me a roulette in me hunt, and me cloak's full of stumps, but I even soon towed him. I'm going towed him to have me a battle with French. I gave his ways for it, Lewin, and to Oudham I went, and I asked to recruit. If they've met up, there can't, no, no, honest lad, 'cause he talked like a king. Come with me down street. I and thee I will bring to wear if thou art willing. Thou must have a shilling. If we go without this were rare news. And so he gave me to pleck with him measure your height. And if you get tight, they gone to that they waited, so I reached me and stretched me, and I never did flinch, says Mum. I believe that my lad to an inch, and I thought this'll do. I'll have guineas enough, and it's Owdham brave, Owdham for me. And so it's fairly well Grenfell to Sodger and Maid. I've got a new shoon, and a rare nice cockade. Fight for our England as good as I can be. The French, Dutch, or Spanish, to me they're all one, and I'll make 'em to stir. I like a new started air, and I'll tell 'em from Owdham I'm come. I'll tell 'em from Owdham I'm come. Thank you, Madame.
Thank you. Monsieur.
And a round of applause for the French. Hugely popular song. But have you noticed something about all these three major songs and stories that I've been telling you about? Is that they are all silly, comical, light-hearted tales. We've got Goneless Gilbert trying to sell his horse at Warrington and failing. We've got Thomas O. Williams who gets cheated out of his calf on his way to fair. It's obviously a dangerous thing to do, is to travel and meet people in pubs. All you lot who've come a long way, Mr. Murch. And then we've got John of Grenfell who desperately wants to fight the French if he can only find them. If we have a tradition in Lancashire, it is that of being goneless. And we are very good at it. There is an unbroken line leading all the way through the people I've been singing about, through lots of others in Victorian Lancashire, into people that we know, into the Georges Formby, the Norman Evans, the Roy Bartloffs, the Les Dawsons, the Mike Hardings, and it's now in the hands of people like Johnny Vegas and Peter Kay and so on. This little Lancashire clown character, is he goneless, or is he the cleverest bloke in the room and he's just not letting on? A lot of men have made a lot of money out of being goneless, and I must admit, I've had a bob or two myself, and it might be true. What if it is? Oh, number one about me's yard, my granny keeps a school. There hasn't many scholars yet, there's not but one or two. They said, found a woman's rear the cross, well, it might be so. I always heard box me rarely once, and put me ears and all. And number two is with the Burns, the way she's clever for folk. Her Billy, only let her as gets jobs at Whaling Coke. They say she curates with Sam and Ned's as lives at number 3. Well, I don't know and I can't tell. It matters now to me. And number 3, right facing Pump Ned Grim, she keeps a shop. He has Ethel's cakes and gingerbread. He's treadle beer and pop. He sells oat cakes and all doth Ned, he hath both soft and hard. And everybody buys of him as lives about in Shard. At number 4, Jack Blundering lives. He goes to the mill and waves. And then at weekend, if he's time, he pows a bit and shaves. But he's badly off, his Jack, poor lad. He's rather long this end. But his children keep him down a bit. There's happened 9 or 10. At number 5, I live myself without Susanna Grimes. But I don't like every wheel. It turns me out at times. And when I'm in, there's no leaks. I have to carry it dark, because I can't pay me lodging brass. I'm always out of work. And at number 6, next door to us, at the other side at Spat, out Susie Collins sells small drink. But it's really always bad. And how it is, as that's the case, I really cannot tell, unless he makes it very sweet and sups it to herself. At number 7, there's nobody lives. They left it yesterday. Bum Bailey's come. They marked their things. They took them all away. They took them in a donkey cart, way on out where they went. I reckon they'd been taken and sold because they owed some rent. But at number 8, the Yorkshire folk, there's only man and wife. I think I've never seen nicer folk than these in all my life. You never hear them falling out like lots of married folk. You always seem good-tempered like, and handy with a joke. And at number 9, Toad Cobbler lives. Toad chap at men's were shoeing. But he's getting very wake and done. I'll have to leave us soon. He reads his Bible every day and sings just like a lark. He says he's practising for heaven. He's well done his work. But at number 10, James Boughton lives. He is nice as Starset Row. He's always plenty of something to eat, and he's lots of brass and all. And when he rides or he walks about, he's dressed up very fine. But he ain't half as near to heaven as him at number 9. And at number 11, my uncle lives. I call him Uncle Tom. He goes to concerts up and down. He plays the kettle drum. He bonds the music and such things. He seems to take a pride. But then he makes as big a noise as all it plays besides. And at number 12, at 300 Row, Joe Stiggins deals in ale. He has 6penny and 4penny, dark coloured, and he's pale. But I never touch it, because I know it's ruined money about. I'm the only chap as doesn't drink as lives in Boughton's yard. And now I've done, I'll say goodbye and I'll leave you for a while. I know as I haven't told me tale in such a first-rate style. But if they're pleased, I'm satisfied, and ask for no reward for telling who my neighbours is, as lives in Boughton's yard. Yeah. There is a lot of Sam in that poem. As I said before, he was a Yorkshireman. He was born a Yorkshireman, and he lived most of his life in and around Lancashire. When he finished in Staley Bridge, because of the cotton famine, which you might have heard of, he left the industry and went on to the Fylde coast from up Blackpool and Fleetwood, and worked in the libraries and working men's institutes up there. But he took a lot of stick from his fellow authors. They made him an honorary member of the Manchester Literary Club because he couldn't be a full member because he wasn't a Lancastrian. But they made him an honorary member of it. And so when he gets the opportunity to tell us that the people in number 8, the Yorkshire folk, are the best people you could ever imagine. They are the nicest people. You never hear them falling out. They're wonderful folk. And when you get to the end in Joe Stiggins' alehouse, and he says, I'm the only chap as doesn't drink, you bet your life he wasn't. He was a fierce, very aggressive teetotaler, a fierce chapel teetotaler. And when he says, I'm the only one who doesn't drink, you better believe it. Because he put so much of himself, and his collected works, which is a substantial volume called Warblings from an Old Songster, and his collected works are a historical document in their own right. They are the history of Lancashire in his time, because as he moved about and as things happened, and he buried 2 wives and about 4 or 5 of his children during his life, so he didn't have an easy journey. But as he went through, he set everything down on paper and in verse. Some of them are quite doggerel rhymes. They've obviously been written very quickly just after the event, but he's recorded all sorts of things which today we regard as quite normal. Setting out to raise funds to build what was to become Blackpool Victoria Hospital. Setting out to build new chapels, and he'd be invited to the retirement dues for lifeboat men in Blackpool. He'd be invited to write poems about everything that's going on and all the organisations that were happening around the time. And he set a standard that other people tried to keep up with. Some did, some failed. One fella who we will miss, I do miss, is John Trafford Clegg of Rochdale. He used to style himself Thowed Waver, but he never got a chance to be owed. He died at 34 years of age, which is why he looks so young on there. His pictures are always younger than the other fella's pictures. He wrote 2 substantial books called Sketches and Rhymes in the Rochdale dialect, and I wrote them, but they're too heavy to carry around. And the 2 hefty volumes, and they are written in a perfect Rochdale accent. The spelling, you can tell that this man really knew what he was writing down. He was really speaking that way. They are very, very interesting stories. Again, a lot of them are true. The people in them were real people. The situations, the events were real events. But he was taken from us. Had he lived, he would, in my opinion, have been the best of the lot. But I have managed to talk for an hour and a quarter about Lancashire without mentioning cotton. So I'm going to do it now. Lancashire would not be Lancashire without the cotton industry. It would not be the Lancashire that we know. If you look on the old maps of Croston, where we are, in fact there's one on the wall of the Lord Nelson pub, the room, I don't know if you've noticed, anybody been to sessions in there, one wall is an old map. There's 2 mills shown in Croston, 2 mills, cotton mills, in a little place like this. And it's got 2 cotton mills all of its own. There were 70 cotton mills within 1 mile of Preston Town Hall. It was a massive industry. Horrocks' spinning mill, which is still standing at the bottom of New Hall Lane in Preston, used to spin cotton with big spinning mills. At the time of the handloom weavers, they used to put out work to 7,000 handloom weavers. They had 7,000 weavers on their books in Horrocks' mills. In 1895, there were over 3,000 mills in the whole of Lancashire. They had about 35-40 million spinning spindles. They had 500,000 looms. They had 750,000 direct workers, mill hands. Everybody, everything that was going on in Lancashire depended on the cotton. The coal miners spent most of the time digging coal for the mill engines. It was a massive, huge industry. And Traff, as his mates called him, wrote, to my mind, the best waving song there is, called simply A Waver's Song. Down it shed on a summer's day, proud some cherry on Lake West top. Rids up slate a chirping away, and I whistle a tune with every top. Flattering loom and whirling wheel, flying shuttle and steady reed. This is a work for to make a monk feel, this was jolly waving eternity. Straight roll everything, plenty walls, tricky tags nodding the gets old and work done in our light way to falls, cogwheels rattle in a merry sound, tidy skits running over it where snowy truck winding on to main, take a good sniff at play and draft its play and dust them a double same. Lads and lassies all standing in rows, working away from morn till night. Gentries, bobs, betties and jaws were running the back on a nimble feet. Keeping time to a steady tune, played Dick Tanger from late to dark. Tried him a wetter and cow that spoon, and he's always a late for another day's work. Waving cotton all sided and wax tables, lost handkerchiefs, outs and outs, shirts and American blacks. tells the Chinaman and Indian clout, doubt his jackanet, shake his frill, your wide narrow it, heavy and light, rats and petticoats, fancy frill, well, wick away, out, wick away, be free. Down it shed on a winter's day, sun's asleep in his cloudy bed, scores of gas lights blazing away on shining, pulling snowy thread, flattering loom and whirling wheel, playing shuttle and steady rings. This is a work for to make 'em unfail, this lost job they're waving its harmony. Yay! Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. We're approaching the end of this, and somewhere here I have this little book, Cracks from a Cobbler's Seat. You've never heard of this. This is the one that I originally got. This is the 8th edition. Printed in 1925. The original edition was produced at Christmas 1887 and put up for sale in the Lancashire Evening Post and advertised as 8 humorous tales from Lancashire, laugh and grow fat. Christmas reading for the masses, it says. It was written by a fellow called Robert Rowe. And I went to find out who is this man, Robert Rowe, because 1887, in 2017 at Christmas, the little thing was 130 years old. And I couldn't find anything about Robert Rowe. I couldn't find anything else that he'd written, nothing. I thought, how can one man write a book that is so massively popular that it runs between 1887 and 1925. It survived the First World War. For God's sake, how does something run to 8 editions and he never writes anything else? Eventually we discovered that he never wrote anything else because he died before the original one was published, because we've traced him through the census records, and eventually he marries and has a son, and then his wife suddenly is a widow. And then this book gets produced by a man who we think was a friend of his in a bookshop in Preston. And so myself and Simon Blacksley, my mate, we decided that we needed to bring this thing back to life. And so we arranged to have the book reprinted. And we said, let's have 500 copies of this book in 2017 and bring it back to life. And so we did. And my daughter, who's a very intelligent young woman, was helping me with the proofreading, which is a bit of a job because there's so many apostrophes and dots and dashes among it. And halfway through this, she said, Dad, why are you printing a book that nobody can read? And I thought, yes, I'm quite proud of this one. And so we decided, Simon and I, that we would record an audio version of the book to go with it. And so people could pick up the book and they could look at the audio, listen to the audio and look at the book, and maybe it will provide a clue for future generations, a key for them to unlock this dialect, so that when they see mass and ass written down, they can hear me say it and they'll know how to do it. And so we set about recording it and found it was far too much to go on one CD. So now it's a double CD. And then we thought, this is a bit boring just having mine and occasionally Simon's voices as well. Let's put a bit of music to it. And thought, well, what's the suitable music for this? We thought, well, maybe a fairground organ. But then you can't do a live presentation because you can't get a fairground organ into the venues. And so we decided the only way was a brass band. So anyway, we booked the Charlie Silver Band to play on our recording. And so we now have 500 of these books In fact, I've only got 100 or so left. But we've got 500 of these books with an audio version and the brass band accompaniment of it. And they're yours at the same price as the original was, relative to being 130 years ago. Because the original one was advertised in the Evening Post for sixpence, this book, with no CD. It was priced sixpence, and the Evening Post it was advertised in was a halfpenny. So you've already worked it out. The Evening Post today is 80 pence. So the book should be, how much, children? £9.60. But for you, it's a tenner. But you don't get a CD for your 40 pence. So you can have a book and a CD, and these are tales all set in Exton, where I live, 4 miles down the road that way. And to show you just how close to home we really are, there is a feature here in one tale. You know how Jackie Walmsley? Well, he went to a ploughing match at Croston, and when all were o'er, they dropped in for wheat sheaf to have a feed. Well, he ate his fill, and was soon as merry as any of them, till at last he rolled o'er and fell asleep. When it had gotten dark, landlord he said, "No, man, waken up. It's time and you should be making toward home." Oh, so away he went toward home, jogging as well as he could, first on pad and then off, for he was greatly well fuddled. At last he got to a stone wall, and he reared his back agin it, and he says to himself, "Ned and Dick, thou mun rest thyself a bit, for thou but about halfway yet. There's nought like a stone wall of the dark night when your clogs is a bit fuddled. You can keep jogging agin it, and it keeps your right end up. You can rest agin it, and fall asleep agin it if you like. So here's off for another do." He walked for about an hour, cluttering again Warside, when he says to himself, "This is a terrible long wall. But I don't know where I should have been about it, for it's helped me on about a bit." Just then, moon begun to shine greatly bright, and Dick went in middle of the road, stirring his very een out at war, and he says, "Well, bit 30 crimes if this doesn't bango. To think as I've been a silly great washhead as I've been walking all this time round this thundering old pinfout." Anyway, there you go. That's how to make walking back to my house last 2 or 3 hours longer than it needs to do. All you need is for your clogs to get fuddled. And there might be some fuddled clogs about later on tonight, do you think? So I've got to end this. I've got to end this with my favourite poem from the Far East, from Saddleworth. Statue of Ammon Ridley stands outside the museum in Uppermill. And he wrote this for an old chap who lives in a little village of Friesland, a couple of miles away from where his statue now stands, just because this old chap liked living where he did. And in case you haven't noticed, I like living in Lancashire too. And sometimes people say, "Have you lived in Charlie all your life?" And I tell them, "Not yet." So thank you very much for coming. Thank you even more for staying this long. It can't have been easy. And this is Ammon Ridley's Oud Frieslander for anybody that's got a home to go to. I was bred and born in Friesland, and it's there I'm bound to die. For of all the blues in Saddleworth, there's not but one for me. With its old stone walls and hedges, We'd fields and lovins and all, and we'd neighbour folks and tarsies. They're dear to me, you know. They say it's grand in Oudham. There's it's all right. But it's grander up in Friesland. It's 50 times as sweet. They say they have men and women as don't as nice as toys, but I'd rather see a waver in his smock and corduroys. They talk about the concerts. All the singers great and rare, but they cannot match yon skylark as he's singing up it there. All the gardens and the flowers for me, I wouldn't swap for this bit of Friesland heather as I'm wearing in me cap. Now I know I'm right broad-spoken. Those fine folks and it's slang, but there's music in a mouthful of this gradely Saddleworth twang, 'cause it smells at fields and meadows, and it tastes like new mown hay, and it warms a man that's perished. It's like supping rum and tea. They all have fancy parlours with shining silverware. They've got polished leather sofas and fine hair-seated chairs. But for me, a sanded hearthstone and a chair that's upside at thune and a pint of ale and baccy, I shanna shift so soon. They all have fancy luncheons with their courses set out so nice. They have partridges and salmon. They've got jelly and they've ice. But for me, a bowl of porridge or a steak, millions on or a mess of broth and dumplings that's just reaching out at pond. These days it's all tow and turmoil. You've a job to keep all straight. But a man's no need to grumble if he's got enough to eat. I've got on and eggs and bacon. I have a peck of one brewed drink. I've got good new milk and butter. I has to weather through, I think. They say there's a hereafter. And there's others saying it's rot, but to me it's just as yet to believe in. God does not. If a man does fair and jannock and he tries to do what's right, then I think if there is a heaven, as he'll stand a rare good seat. 'Cause I were bred and born in Friesland, and it's there I'm bound to die. For of all the blues in Saddleworth, there's not but one for me, with its old stone walls and hedges, and with its fields and lawns and all, and with its neighbour folks and tarsies. They're dear to me, you know. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next event in here this afternoon is going to be the tea session with the wonderful Peter and Barbara Snake. Please stay with us. The bar is open. We're going to be serving pins. So, yes, see you later. Thank you for coming and thank you again.
Violet Carson, famous for all of us. And this may well be what set it off, but it's a good tale, but it might not be true. And Mark Dowding, our publicity officer at Lancashire Society, phoned Tony Warren and said, "Tony, is this true?" And he said, very diplomatically, "I can't remember." So it is a good tale, and it might be true. What if it is? Oh, number one, about me, my granny keeps a school. There hasn't many scholars yet, there's not but one or two. They said, found a woman's rather cross. Well, it might be so. I know heard box me rarely once and poo me ears and all. And number two is with the Burns, the way she's clever for folk. Her Billy, Thornley leather as gets jobs at Whaling Coke. They say she courts with Sam and Ned's as lives at number 3. Well, I don't know and I can't tell. It matters now to me. And number 3, a right facing pump, Ned Grimm, she keeps a shop. He has Ethel's cakes and gingerbread. He's threadle beer and pop. He sells oat cakes and all, doesn't he? He has both soft and hard. And everybody buys of him as lives about in shed. At number 4, Jack Blundering lives. He goes to the mill and waves. And then at weekend, if he's time, he pows a bit and shaves. But he's badly off, his Jack, poor lad. He's rather long this end. But his children keep him down a bit. There's that 9 or 10. At number 5, I live myself without Susanna Grimes. But I don't like every wheel. It turns me out at times. And when I'm in, there's no leaks. I have to carry it down, because I can't pay me lodging brass. I'm always out of work. And at number 6, next door to us, at the other side at Spat, out Susie Collins sells small drink. But it's really always bad. And now it is, as that's the case, I really cannot tell, unless he makes it very sweet and sups it to herself. At number 7, there's nobody lives. They left it yesterday. Bombaylies come, they mark the things. They took them all away. They took them in a donkey cart, way on out where they went. I reckon they've been taken and sold because they owed some rent. But at number 8, the Yorkshire folk, there's only man and wife. I think I've never seen nicer folk than these in all my life. You never hear them falling out like lots of married folk. You always seem good-tempered like, and handy with a joke. And at number 9, Toad Cobbler lives. Toad chap at men's were shoon. But he's getting very wake and done. I left to leave us soon. He reads his Bible every day and sings just like a lark. He says he's practising for heaven. He's well done his work. But at number 10, James Boughton lives. He has nicest house at Row. He's always plenty of something to eat, and he's lots of brass and all. And when he rides or he walks about, he's dressed up very fine. But he ain't half as near to heaven as him at number 9. And at number 11, my uncle lives. I call him Uncle Tom. He goes to concerts up and down. He plays a kettle drum. He runs the music and such things. He seems to take a pride. But then he makes as big a noise as all it plays besides. And at number 12, at the end of the row, Joe Stiggins deals in ale. He has 6penny and 4penny, dark coloured, and he's pale. But I never touch it, because I know it's ruined money about. I'm the only chap as doesn't drink as lives about in Shard. And now I've done, I'll say goodbye and I'll leave you for a while. I know as I haven't told me tale in such a first-rate style. But if they're pleased, I'm satisfied and ask for no reward for telling who my neighbours is as lives about in Shard. Thank you very much. There is a lot of Sam in that poem. As I said before, he was a Yorkshireman. He was born a Yorkshireman, and he lived most of his life in and around Lancashire. When he finished in Staley Bridge, because of the cotton famine, which you might have heard of, he left the industry and went on to the Fylde coast from up Blackpool and Fleetwood, and worked in the libraries and working men's institutes up there. But he took a lot of stick from his fellow authors. They made him an honorary member of the Manchester Literary Club because he couldn't be a full member because he wasn't a Lancastrian. But they made him an honorary member of it. And so when he gets the opportunity to tell us that the people in number 8, the Yorkshire folk, are the best people you could ever imagine. They are the nicest people. You never hear them falling out. They're wonderful folk. And when you get to the end in Joe Stiggins' alehouse, and he says, I'm the only chap as doesn't drink, you bet your life he wasn't. He was a fierce, very aggressive teetotaler, a fierce chapel teetotaler. And when he says, I'm the only one as doesn't drink, you better believe it. Because he put so much of himself, and his collected works, which is a substantial volume called Warblings from an Old Songster, and his collected works are a historical document in their own right. They are the history of Lancashire in his time, because as he moved about and as things happened, and he buried 2 wives and about 4 or 5 of his children during his life, so he didn't have an easy journey. But as he went through, he set everything down on paper and in verse. Some of them are quite doggerel rhymes. They've obviously been written very quickly just after the event, but he's recorded all sorts of things which today we regard as quite normal. Setting out to raise funds to build what was to become Blackpool Victoria Hospital. Setting out to build new chapels, and he'd be invited to the retirement dues for lifeboat men in Blackpool. He'd be invited to write poems about everything that's going on and all the organisations that were happening around the time. And he set a standard that other people tried to keep up with. Some did, some failed. One fella who we will miss, I do miss, is John Trafford Clegg of Rochdale. He used to style himself Thowed Waver, but he never got a chance to be Owed. He died at 34 years of age, which is why he looks so young on there. His pictures are always younger than the other fella's pictures. He wrote 2 substantial books called Sketches and Rhymes in the Rochdale dialect. And I wrote them, but they're too heavy to carry around. And the 2 hefty volumes, and they are written in a perfect Rochdale accent. The spelling, you can tell that this man really knew what he was writing down. He was really speaking that way. They are very, very interesting stories. Again, a lot of them are true. The people in them were real people. The situations, the events were real events. But he was taken from us. Had he lived, he would, in my opinion, have been the best of the lot. But I have managed to talk for an hour and a quarter about Lancashire without mentioning cotton. So I'm going to do it now. Lancashire would not be Lancashire without the cotton industry. It would not be the Lancashire that we know. If you look on the old maps of Croston, where we are, in fact, there's one on the wall of the Lord Nelson pub, the room. I don't know if you've noticed, anybody been to sessions in there? One wall is an old map. There's 2 mills shown in Croston, 2 mills, cotton mills, in a little place like this. And it's got 2 cotton mills, all of its own. There were 70 cotton mills within 1 mile of Preston Town Hall. It was a massive industry. Horrocks' spinning mill, which is still standing at the bottom of New Hall Lane in Preston, used to spin cotton with big spinning mills. At the time of the handloom weavers, they used to put out work to 7,000 handloom weavers. They had 7,000 weavers on their books in Horrocks' mills. In 1895, there were over 3,000 mills in the whole of Lancashire. They had about 35-40 million spinning spindles. They had 500,000 looms. They had 750,000 direct workers, mill hands. Everybody, everything that was going on in Lancashire depended on the cotton. The coal miners spent most of the time digging coal for the mill engines. It was a massive, huge industry. And Traff, as his mates called him, wrote, to my mind, the best waving song there is, called simply A Waver's Song. Down it shed on a summer's day, without some cherry on Lake West top. Rids up Slater chirping away, and a whistle tune way every top. Flattering loom and whirling wheel, flying shuttle and steady reed. This is a work for to make 'em on feel, this was job the way with its harmony. Straight brawl other than clank weak walls, chicken tags knobbed in the head sore and work done in our light way to falls, cogwheels rattle in a merry sound, tidy skits running over it where snowy clock winding on to brain, take a good sniff at playing draft its play and dust them with noble same. Lads and lassies all standing in rows, working away from morn till night. Chanters, bobs, betties and jaws are running the back of their nimble feet. Keeping time to a steady tune played, Vic Tanger from late to dark. Trade him on wetter and cow that spoon, and he's always a rate for another day's work. Waving cotton wool sizes and max tables, lost handkerchiefs, outs and outs. Shirts for the American black, towels for Chinaman and Indian clout. Doubtis, jackerneck, shapes, quills, your wide narrow with heavy and leet. Flats and petticoats, fancy frill, well, wick away, right, wick away, be free. Down it shed on a winter's day, son's asleep in his cloudy bed. Scores of gas leaks blazing away on shining, pulley and snowy thread. Flattering loom and whirling wheel, playing shuttle and steady reed. This is a work for to make 'em on feel, this lost job they're waving its harmony. Hey. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. We are approaching the end of this, and somewhere here I have this little book, Cracks from a Cobbler's Seat. You've never heard of this. This is the one that I originally got. This is the 8th edition, printed in 1925. The original edition was produced at Christmas 1887 and put up for sale in the Lancashire Evening Post and advertised as 8 humorous tales from Lancashire, laugh and grow fat. Christmas reading for the masses, it says. It was written by a fellow called Robert Rowe. And I went to find out who is this man, Robert Rowe, because 1887, in 2017 at Christmas, the little thing was 130 years old. And I couldn't find anything about Robert Rowe. I couldn't find anything else that he'd written, nothing. I thought, how can one man write a book that is so massively popular that it runs between 1887 and 1925? It survived the First World War. For God's sake, how does something run to 8 editions and he never writes anything else? Eventually we discovered that he never wrote anything else because he died before the original one was published, because we've traced him through the census records, and eventually he marries and has a son, and then his wife suddenly is a widow. And then this book gets produced by a man who we think was a friend of his in a bookshop in Preston. And so myself and Simon Blacksley, my mate, we decided that we needed to bring this thing back to life. And so we arranged to have the book reprinted. And we said, let's have 500 copies of this book in 2017 and bring it back to life. And so we did. And my daughter, who's a very intelligent young woman, was helping me with the proofreading, which is a bit of a job because there's so many apostrophes and dots and dashes among it. And halfway through this, she said, Dad, why are you printing a book that nobody can read? And I thought, yes, I'm quite proud of this woman. And so we decided, Simon and I, that we would record an audio version of the book to go with it. And so people could pick up the book and they could look at the audio, listen to the audio and look at the book, and maybe It will provide a clue for future generations, a key for them to unlock this dialect, so that when they see mass and ass written down, they can hear me say it and they'll know how to do it. And so we set about recording it and found it was far too much to go on one CD. So now it's a double CD. And then we thought, this is a bit boring, just having, mine and occasionally Simon's voices as well. Let's put a bit of music to it. And thought, well, what's a suitable music for this? We thought, well, maybe a fairground organ. But then you can't do a live presentation because you can't get a fairground organ into the venues. And so we decided the only way was a brass band. So anyway, we booked the Charlie Silver Band to play on our recording. And so we now have 500 of these books. In fact, I've only got 100 or so left. But we've got 500 of these books with an audio version and the brass band accompaniment on it. And they're yours at the same price as the original was, relative to being 130 years ago. Because the original one was advertised in the Evening Post for sixpence, this book, with no CD. It was priced sixpence, and the Evening Post it was advertised in was a halfpenny. So you've already worked it out. The Evening Post today is 80 pence. So the book should be, how much, children? £9.60. But for you, it's a tenner. But you didn't get a CD for your 40 pence. So you can have a book and a CD, and these are tales all set in Exton, where I live, 4 miles down the road that way. And to show you just how close to home we really are, there is a feature here in one tale. You know how Jackie Walmsley? Well, he went to a ploughing match at Croston, and when all were o'er, they dropped in for wheat sheaf to have a feed. Well, he ate his fill, and was soon as merry as any of them, till at last he rolled o'er and fell asleep. When it had gotten dark, landlord he said, "Never now, mon, waken up. It's time that you should be making toward to him." Oh, so away he went toward to him, jogging as well as he could, first on pad and then off, for he was greatly well fuddled. At last he got to a stone wall, and he reared his back agin it, and he says to himself, "Ned and Dick, thou mun rest thyself a bit, for thou but about halfway yet. There's nought like a stone wall of a dark night when your clogs is a bit fuddled. You can keep jogging agin it, and it keeps your right end up. You can rest agin it, and fall asleep agin it if you like. So here's off for another do." He walked for about an hour, cluttering again warside, when he says to himself, "This is a terrible long wall, but I don't know where I should have been about it, for it's helped me on about a bit." Just then, moon begun to shine greatly bright, and Dick went it middle at road, stirring his very een out at war, and he says, "Well, bit 30 crimes if this doesn't bang o. To think as I've been a silly great washhead as I've been walking all this time round this thundering old pinfout." Anyway, there you go. That's how to make walking back to my house last 2 or 3 hours longer than it needs to do. All you need is for your clogs to get fuddled. And there might be some fuddled clogs about later on tonight, do you think? So I've got to end this. I've got to end this with my favourite poem from the Far East, from Saddleworth. statue of Ammon Ridley stands outside the museum in Uppermill. And he wrote this for an old chap who lives in a little village of Friesland, a couple of miles away from where his statue now stands, just because this old chap liked living where he did. And in case you haven't noticed, I like living in Lancashire too. And sometimes people say, have you lived in Charlie all your life? And I tell them, not yet. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you even more for staying this long. It can't have been easy. And this is Ammon Ridley's Oud Frieslander for anybody that's got a home to go to. I was bred and born in Friesland, and it's there I'm bound to die. For of all the brews in Saddleworth, there's not but one for me. With its old stew and wars and hedges, with its fields and lovens and all, and with its neighbour folks and tarsies, they're dear to me, you know. They say it's grand in Oudham, others it's all right. But it's grander up in Friesland, it's 50 times as sweet. They say they have men and women as are done as nice as toys, but I'd rather see a waver in his smock and corduroys. They talk about the concerts. All the singers great and rare, but they cannot match yon skylark as he's singing up it there. All the gardens and the flowers for me, I wouldn't swap for this bit of Friesland nether as I'm wearing in me cap. Now I know I'm right broad-spoken, those fine folks, and it's slang, but there's music in a mouthful of this gradely Saddleworth twang, 'cause it smells at fields and meadows, and it tastes like new mown hay, and it warms a man that's perished. It's like supping rum and tea. They all have fancy parlours with shining silverware. They've got polished leather sofas and fine hair-seated chairs. But for me, a Sunday hearthstone and a chair that's upside at Thune and a pint of ale and baccy, I shan't shift so soon. They all have fancy luncheons with their courses set out so nice. They have partridges and salmon. They've got jelly and they've ice. But for me, a bowl of porridge or a steak with onions on or a mess of broth and dumplings that's just reaching out at pan. These days it's all tow and turmoil. You've a job to keep all straight. But a man's no need to grumble if he's got enough to eat. I've got ham and eggs and bacon. I have a peck of one brewed drink. I've got good new milk and butter. I has to weather through, I think. They say there's a hereafter. And there's others saying it's rot, but to me it's just as easy to believe in God does not. If a man does fair and jannock and he tries to do what's right, then I think if there is a heaven, as he'll stand a rare good seat. 'Cause I were bred and born in Friesland, and it's there I'm bound to die. For of all the brews in Saddleworth, there's not but one for me, with its old stew and walls and hedges, and with its fields and lawns and all, and with its neighbour folks and tarsies. They're dear to me, you know. Thank you very much.
The next event in here this afternoon is going to be the tea session with the wonderful Peter and Barbara Snape. Please stay with us. The bar is open. We're going to be serving pins. So, yeah, see you later. Thank you for coming and thank you.